Thanks for tuning in. Today we're looking at how to recover a battery which has been discharged down to 4 volts by accident. I had a bit of a disaster. We had a cold snap and the cheap Chinese charge controller which I bought for my solar array decided to fail at the same time that the handle fell off my garage door. So for a couple of days the battery sat there being discharged by the PIR lights and not charged by the solar panels due to the charge controller being malfunctioned. So this could be a disaster. Normally you might think that battery needs to be trashed in that situation, but I'm going to just talk you through a way to recover a battery, and in many cases this will work, although obviously you need to make your own decisions about safety aspects of doing this. One of the advantages of using an AGM battery is that if you do get a problem, it takes some of the danger of risking a recharge of a deep cycle battery from a very flat state out of the equation. So in other words, if the battery were to explode under charge, there's a little bit less danger of getting covered in acid because it's absorbed in the matting between the plates. Many battery chargers use a timer function or a mix of both timer and analysis to decide how to charge a battery. And in this case I'm going to be talking about the 4A100 battery charger. This is quite a decent, cheap and cheerful charger which I picked up on eBay, and it's by Defender. You get different labels which are basically the same thing from different companies. This charger has a function on it where it analyzes a battery and based on the voltage that it sees decides whether it's dealing with a 6 volt or a 12 volt battery. And one of the problems with discharging a 12 volt battery down to 4 volts is that the charger will see that as a 6 volt cell and it will try and charge it accordingly. Now one of the hacks you can use is to get the charger to operate up to your 12 volts. So you have to be patient to achieve this. Everything is telling you that the battery's had it. It's 4 volts, it's been sat there for a couple of days, time to spend over £100 on a new AGM battery. But I'm a bit of a cheapskate and I decided to have a go at recovering this battery using a charger that's not designed for the job. It does have a recovery function, but you need to trick it into charging the correct voltage, which is a little bit difficult to do. But I'm going to talk you through that to see if I can save you a bit of money. Please make your own decisions about safety. You need to be aware that a very deeply discharged battery which has been having a forced charge on it can gas or can be disrupted, explode, whatever you want to call it, and there are inherent dangers in that, both in terms of explosive gases, but also in danger of the battery itself exploding. And if you're in the vicinity, that's really bad news. If you are merely clearing up afterwards, it's still bad news. So you need to make your own decision on whether you think it's worth doing. But for me, I can spot the danger signs to a certain degree, and I was pretty confident with an AGM battery, even if it did go wrong, that the outcome would be minimal. About an hour of sitting there connecting and disconnecting, watching the voltage creep up. And what I had to do was to watch the voltage, because the voltage drops off suddenly with the charger as it sees that it's what it thinks is a 6 volt cell is overcharged or charged adequately at least. It drops its own output voltage. So what I was doing was watching it and getting an idea of the pattern that it used to provide, say for example 7.2 volts. I'd watch it for about 4 seconds, and then just before it dropped its voltage I'd disconnect the crocodile clips, and then what you have is like a reserve voltage on the battery, and you're able to climb from there. So you're not always going 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You're always trying to do 1 step forward, 1 step forward, 1 step forward. And by doing that and constantly checking the battery for any signs of bulging or heat, I was able to creep that voltage up. You've got to be patient, but it's worth it if you want to save yourself a few £100. This particular charger, the Defender 4A100, it was basically, it has what's called a recovery function, and it tries to recharge a dead battery for about half an hour before it gives up and shows a battery fault sign. Now, once I got to 7.5 volts through that patient process, I put on the battery charger and it started to try and recover the battery. Now, every half an hour the charger would switch off and show that the battery was faulted, but if you checked out the voltage on the battery, it was climbing very, very steadily. It wasn't getting to a point where the charger would see it as being a stable and useful battery, and it certainly wasn't getting there fast. But by connecting and reconnecting the charger every half an hour, it was putting that little bit more charge in there. And if you think about it, it's trying to do maybe half an amp an hour, and if this is a 95 ampere hour AGM battery and it's been fully discharged, then you're probably looking at maybe, what, 75 hours at that rate to get it to a full charge, and that's going to take a long time. So what you need to do is to overcome that timeout on the battery charger, believing that your charger is okay, and you can get an indication of that by the fact that it's not bulging on charge and it's not getting hot, and also you can see by the fact that if you leave it a little while, the voltage doesn't just drop off on its own, it maintains the voltage to a certain extent. Then you can gradually build that charge up, overcoming that safety function on the charger. And that's something that I advise you to do only if you think that that is the right thing to do. I'm not saying that you should, I'm just saying that's what I did. So after about 2 days of switching the charger on and off to overcome the safety function, the charge in the battery got to the threshold where a standard charge would start to work, and it stopped seeing it as a failed battery. So we got up to about 10.5 volts, and then a normal bulk absorption float charge was able to function. It took quite a long time to get that in there, but it was great to see the battery holding its voltage, and it charged up to a full state within another day. So what I've done is I've taken a battery that you might normally think was ready for the trash, ready to go in the bin. Damn cheap charge controller has knackered my £130 battery, but actually with a bit of patience I've managed to recover it. And I have to say, this charger for only about £25, or what, $35 was an absolute godsend to have on hand. And I'd always advise that if you're relying on battery systems, that you do have a mains battery charger just in case you need to do some kind of health work on your charger. Now you may be wondering why I didn't just attach my solar panels through a new charge controller. The simple answer is that if you put a say 15 volts output on a charge controller from a 200 watt solar panel straight onto a 4 volt dead inverted commas battery, you are going to get that bulging. You're trying to force the battery to accept a charge that it's not ready to accept. I've also checked that this battery has maintained its voltage, so it's held its voltage at full charge for a couple of days now. I don't know what its capacity is going to be until I attach it up with the new charge controller and panels when they arrive, but I'll let you know. I hope you found this useful. Great way to save a little bit of money if you can. Again, please make your own decisions on the safety of it. I've not had a problem, but that's not to say that you might have a battery in a different condition, and you need to be very wary of that. But if you can save money, you can spend that on something else that's also useful. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and share, and also please check out the book The Journey of Square Peg, which is available on Amazon.